Bob Proctor said that an intention is a failure only if we quit. In this video, I'm going to share with you how not to fail, but more importantly, how not to quit. So there's two principles that I'm going to share with you that are going to help you understand what is going on and how you can overcome it so that you don't fail and, more importantly, don't quit. So before I do that, I want to talk about three things that always get in your way. And these three things happen all of the time. Now, Jack Canfield in his book, The Success Principles, talked about these three things. And ever since I studied this book years ago, I have seen them happen time and time again. So there are three things that are always going to get in your way. And those three things are considerations, fears, and roadblocks. And these considerations, fears, and roadblocks are always there. They're hiding in the shadows. They're just like, a villain hiding in the shadows, ready to get you. And they're there on purpose. They're there in your mind, they're there in your life, in your world. They're ready to attack you and get in your way. So let's break them down. So considerations are things like, can I handle this? Let's say you're trying to start a new business, or you're trying to sell a new product or service, and so you're considering it and you're thinking about, what should I do? How should I do this? How should I market? Who should I partner with? And you have all sorts of considerations going on. Which direction do I go in? Do I take this direction? Do I make this decision? What's the best thing for me to do? And you're having all sorts of considerations. So as you have these considerations, you might let one of them get in your way. One of them might be too big for you to handle, because that's what fear is. You fear something that you can't handle in the future, so you don't do it. It's a consideration. So you're considering building a new product or service or business, and there's a lot of fear and trepidation around it. You're fearing the possible failure of it because there are a lot of things that are unknown. And so you have all these types of considerations. And when you're having considerations, you don't realize that they are normal. That's normal. You should be having considerations. You do need to use your perspective and your reasoning faculty of your mind, because it's there and it's going to trigger that. It's going to be something that gets in your way. Do I go through the dark forest, or do I take the well-lit road? Those are the kinds of things that you are going to have to think about each and every time you go to do something new. So if you feel like you've run into considerations before and then back down, know that it's normal. You just have to recognize that it's something you need to handle. And they are there. They're there for you to be challenged, to be stretched. Nobody has developed courage unless they did something that required courage. Nobody met, their partner, their life partner, their spouse, without having a little bit of butterflies, a little bit of anxiety. That. Like when you met your now partner or wife or spouse or husband, you had some anxiety around that. And so you have to realize that considerations are always going to be there. The next thing is fears. So fears, that's an emotion. So it's internal. So a consideration is also thoughts. It's things that you're having internally. You're thinking about, you're conflicting with yourself. You're wondering, should I do this or should I do that? And should I go with this person, or should I buy this service, or should I invest in this product, or should I hire this person? These are all considerations. Now, fears are things that are unknown, fears of the future, fears of things that you don't know if they're going to happen or not, if it's going to work out for you or not. And fears are things that you think that you can't handle. That's what a fear is. You don't like the situation that's potentially coming. Like let's say you have a fear that if you make a bad decision about your business or your life, that it's going to affect your family. It's going to affect your, let's say you're married and you have a wife or a husband, and you fear it's going to affect them. So you fear it, and so you don't make the decision. You don't invest in something because you fear that it's going to cause problems in your family, and it's going to be some issues in the future. So fears are internal, and you're conflicting with yourself again. So you're considering things in the first step, your considerations, you're considering all sorts of options, and then fears are also thoughts in your mind. They're not things that have happened. So You have fears about something in the future. It hasn't happened. The only fears that we have today are fears of, a near miss, an accident, or almost falling, or something of that nature. We don't have many fears today. We don't have anything to fear. We don't live in environments where things are attacking us or coming at us. Except if you're in a country where there's wars going on, then you might have some fears because you don't know when the enemy is going to attack. So fears are always there, and you just have to know that you need to handle them. And if you can figure out how to handle those fears, or if you can at least get those fears out and write them down and think about them from a broader perspective. Is this real? Is this something that I can handle? Is this something I can work through? Can I talk to other people about it so that I don't get caught in a vortex of fear and then don't do anything? So that's number 2. Number 3 is roadblocks. Roadblocks are external. So by contrast, fears and considerations are internal. Roadblocks are external. So you will have roadblocks showing up, and it could be things like your car breaking down, or maybe an appliance breaking down, or even somebody getting sick, and then you have to attend to them, or something like somebody getting hacked, like if somebody's website and personal IP got hacked. And I've seen that happen. And then next thing you know, your time and attention is diverted. Why? Because that's part of your product or service. So considerations, fears are internal, and roadblocks are external. I've seen it happen where somebody's appliance broke down. Their clothes washer broke down, and they needed to get a new one. Well, guess what? That's a roadblock. Why? Because now they need to go out and find one that's suitable for them, and maybe find the best price, or whatever the case may be. And so it takes time and attention away from what it is that you want to do. So every time you set a goal and you have something you want, these things are going to show up, and you just have to know they are normal. And now you have to figure out, how can I handle these 3 things, these fears, considerations, and roadblocks? How do I move through this challenge without letting them stop me? That's what you have to figure out. And once you can do that, then you can overcome them and keep going. And oftentimes it just becomes something that you need to rationalize, you need to think about, and you need to write it down and get it out of your head, and maybe talk to some other people about it so that you can get their input, rather than sitting there silently wondering, is my spouse going to freak out if I make this decision and do this thing? Instead, just talk with them. That's all you have to do, and bring it to the surface and find out what their circumstances are and get their agreement. So that's what you can do. So those are the 3 things that will always be there. They're always there. And if they're not there, your goal's not big enough. That's clear. In Jack's book, he talks about that. If your goals aren't big enough, then you're not going to have considerations, fears, and roadblocks. You should be running into them. And I anticipate them. This is the kind of thing that I'm seeing all the time. Every time I interact with somebody, every time they try to do something new, they take on a bigger challenge, they're going to run into one of those things. And then all we have to do is recognize them and then step through and keep going. So those are the 3 things that are going to get in your way. Now for the 2 principles. The 2 principles, I'll start off with principle number 1. Principle number 1 that's going to get in your way, it's called the Valley of Despair. And I'm going to give you a complete video below. You can watch it below, or it'll be somewhere here on the screen, but you can watch it, and it talks about this Valley of Despair. And the research started, it came from 1970. So that research about the emotional cycle of change shows that there's a valley that we go through every time we go to change, and every time we go to do something new. It's scary, and so we go into the valley. We go into the shadow of death, and so we're moving down into this valley, and we have to somehow get the energy and the velocity and come out of that valley. We have to climb, right? So, we start off all excited, that we have this new potential, this new idea, and then we end up getting informed that, maybe this isn't, the greatest thing, or some people start talking against us, and that just happens naturally. Whenever you try to do something new, guess what? People that don't know any better are going to talk you down. They're going to talk you out of doing that. They're going to talk you out of buying that thing. I tried to buy a car when I was younger, and my father talked me out of it. And the reason was he knew the person that was selling it, and he didn't trust them. And so basically what my father did was give me the deposit back instead of me following through and getting that car from that guy. So he tried to help me out. Did it help me out? Possibly. Maybe I didn't get a lemon of a car, but ultimately I didn't go through the valley of despair and figure it out myself. So as you go into this valley, you get talked out of doing what you what you think is important, and what you want, and then you end up in this valley, you end up in this trough, and it's either you find the energy and you start climbing out of it, or you bounce right back, you snap right back to where you were. So this valley of despair is always going to be there, and you're always going to run into it, but you need to recognize that if you want to move through the valley, you need to have some support, some energy, and some courage and some confidence, and you're going to have to take a lot of action, because that's what's required. So you develop the courage and confidence. You have to develop the competence, which is take the action, do the work, make the videos, write the article, create the document, create the workflow. Whatever it is, you have to do something, and then you can start moving up out of this valley. Otherwise, you're going to get caught into a vicious loop of considerations, fears, and roadblocks, and then bounce right back to where you were. You'll snap right back. That's how habits are. If you take a habit and you like an elastic band, and you stretch it, unless you break it, that habit will snap back. So you have to really work hard to come out of this valley. So the model is called the emotional cycle of change, and I'm going to provide that video below. You can watch it and you can see exactly what it is and how you can overcome it. Now, as you're coming out of that valley, you're going to have what's called habit gravity. This is principle number 2. Habit gravity is going to be pulling on you. Now, habit gravity is basically your habits, your habitual ways of doing things, your natural ways of doing things, your beliefs, your patterns of belief, your patterns of action, your patterns of inaction, your patterns of distraction, your patterns of procrastination. All those patterns are going to be working against you. You're going to be trying to climb up this mountain to get to the top. You want to get out of that valley and you want to climb up, and you're trying to climb up, but guess what? Habit gravity is pulling you back down, and the little voice in your head is just saying, hey, just come back down to base camp, just come back down here where it's comfortable and cozy, and you don't have to work so hard. Why do this? What are you trying to accomplish? What's the significance? And those little voices in your head will talk you out of going up that mountain and climbing out of that valley. And you have to recognize the voices, and as long as your goal needs to be bigger than your challenges. Your desire needs to be bigger than your challenges. Napoleon Hill taught us that when your desire is bigger than your challenge, then you will go. You will do whatever it takes to get where you need to go, and you won't let habit gravity pull on you and tug you down and take you back down to base camp. Base camp is where it's safe. That's like at the bottom of the mountain where there's a chalet and it's comfy and cozy and there's a warm fire there, and you just hang around drinking hot cocoa and have a good time. That's what habit gravity can do. It can tug you and pull on you and take you right back down to where you started, and that doesn't feel good. It feels like failure. And like I was saying at the beginning, quitting. Quitting is the beginning of failure. The minute you start quitting, the minute you start giving up and saying, okay, I can't do this. And, and then you start going down. Habit gravity is pulling on you at that point. It's pulling on you, tugging you, pulling you right back down to that valley of despair, taking you back down to where you were. And it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good at all. If you ever tried to get fit and lose fat, it's challenging. Why? Because you're trying to go against your patterns of eating, patterns of inactivity. You're not exercising. And you might take off 75 pounds. I had a friend who took 75 pounds off, but then she put 35 back on. Why? Because her desire to eat bread and wheat-based products was bigger than her desire to get fit and lean and stay healthy and strong. That's the challenge. And also, whenever you're making changes, you're changing your self-image. You're creating a new identity. And you need to have a new identity to pull you up that mountain. If you don't have a new identity to pull you up that mountain, you won't do it. You won't take the action that's required. You won't muster up the energy to climb and struggle. You won't do it. It's not worth it if you don't have the desire and the passion and something behind it, a motivation. You have to have your heart into it. You have to have your head into it, and you have to have a method. You have to have, heart, head, and hands. You're going to be using all three of those things to work through this situation. If you don't have your heart into it, you're not going to be motivated. If you don't have your head into it, you're not going to have the right mindset. And if you don't have the right method, you're not going to take the right steps to get you there. That's just the way it is. You need to have all of those things aligned. We know it. Every year, people go to the gym and they try to get fit, and they have a New Year's resolution. They hire a personal trainer, and within 2 to 3 months, they're back to where they were, and they're doing nothing. And that's it. I've seen it time and time again. I taught spinning for 12 years, and I would see all these people come into the gym, and I would challenge them, and I would say, let's see if you can be here by April. See if you can make that commitment. And people would say they would, and then I wouldn't see them anymore. But that's the thing. So again, you're going through the emotional cycle of change. You're going into the valley, and then you're climbing that mountain. Habit gravity is pulling on you. You're going through the valley of despair, and you're climbing the mountain, and you have considerations, fears, and roadblocks against you. They're there to challenge you. And if they're not there, your desire and goal is not big enough. You just need to recognize that. Make it bigger. Instead of, trying to make something 2 times bigger or 2 times better, make it 10. That's a stretch. Go for something really, really big. If you want to impact millions of people, go for 10 million instead. Just say instead of 1 million, 10 million. Just 10 times your effort, 10 times your objective. And then you'll have the motivation. And if you have the motivation, then you're tapping into your heart. And then if you have your mind working for you, you have the mindset that's going to work for you, you got your head working and helping you, then great. Then you're going to take action. You're going to get your hands in motion. You're going to take action. You're going to do what you need to do. And as long as you get evidence that it's working and things are going in the right direction, and you're getting all of the things reflected back to you that are helping you to get better and stronger and move forward, then you keep moving in that direction. So those are the things that you need to do. And these 2 principles are there. The valley of despair and habit gravity, they're going to be pulling on you. And considerations, fears, and roadblocks are the things that are going to be tugging away at you, trying to keep you the same, trying to keep you down. And you just have to recognize that this is normal. I just need to figure out how to handle these things. Who can I hire? Who can I get help from? Who can I talk to? Who can support me on this? Start asking those questions. Don't ask how, ask who, not how. Just flip the letters around. Instead of how, ask who, and then start moving up the valley. And moving out of the valley, up that mountain, and you get some velocity. Get people behind you, supporting you. Tell other people that love you and care for you about your goals, and get them supporting you. And only let them support you if they have the confidence in you and they trust that you're going to do exactly what you said you're going to do. And then you can move up that valley and keep going and get stronger and better. And you'll see that as you move through considerations, fears, and roadblocks, you get out of the valley and you start climbing the mountain, and then you reach the peak. And then guess what? Then now you're going to set a new goal, and you're going to go into a new valley, and that you'll keep repeating this process. That's how life goes. It's rhythmic. It's flow, right? You get into a state of flow, and you keep climbing these peaks and valleys. They don't need to be steep at first. Your initial ones might be, but they don't need to be steep, and you can work through them and get through them. So if you've ever run into consideration, fears, and roadblocks, let me know. This is something that's normal, and if you're running into some now and you want some help, let me know as well. I can always provide you some resources, but below you're going to find the video on the emotional cycle of change and moving through the valley of despair and up moving through habit gravity. So watch that video and then put it into action. And as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you on my next video. Bye.